Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to understand the differences between constant and read-only variable in C Sharp. Theoretically both of them are constants, but there is a subtle difference between these two. Constant is a compile time constant, whereas read-only is a runtime constant. Let's see it in action to understand more on this. I have created a console application and I have created a class called read-only versus constant. Let me declare a variable called x. Usually at the time of declaration we can either initialize it or we can leave it without initializing the variable. What I mean to say is we can initialize this variable with a value of 10 or we can leave it without initializing it. Let me initialize this x variable with the value of 10. Let me print this. Before that, let me instantiate this class. Let me execute this. So program is executed without any issue. Let me close this. So this is a normal variable. Let me declare another variable constant, and I have initialized it with a value of 3.1.10. As I said earlier, when we declare a variable, we can initialize it or we can leave it without initializing it with a value. But in the case of constant, we cannot leave the variable without initializing it. We have to initialize it at the time of declaration itself. That is why we call this as compile time constant, because during the compile time itself it will verify if this variable has been initialized it or not. If there is no value, then it will throw error. As you can see here, a constant field requires a value to be provided. So without a value, constant variable cannot live. So let me initialize it. This is the first difference between constant and read-only. Let me also create another variable called read-only, which is a runtime constant. Now in the case of read-only, it will allow you to have the variable without initializing it. As you can see here, it doesn't throw any error here. Also, you can also initialize it with any value like this. So in both cases, it will work. It will allow you. But in the case of constant, you must initialize it with some value. Otherwise, it will throw error. Once the constant variable has been initialized it, this cannot be modified inside the program. But in the case of read only, it can be modified using the constructor. Let us see that in action. I'm going to try to assign a value to the constant variable. As you can see, it has been already as initialized it. And if I try to assign another value, which is 3.145, then it throws error. So you can't modify the value throughout the program. In the case of read only, you can do it. Let's assign some value. I'm going to assign the value 20 to this. So as I said, this value cannot be modified within the program, I mean within the main program, but we can modify this value within the constructor. So let me cut this line. Let me introduce a constructor. Let's print this value. Let me execute this program. Since the value has been modified in the constructor as 20, now we are able to see the value of size is 20. And again, this value can be modified through any constructor. For example, let me introduce another constructor with a parameter. Let me instantiate it with a new value. And after the modification, let me print this value. Let me execute this now. So after the second time modification through another constructor, now the value has become 50. So the summary of this session is both constant and read-only are constants, but constant variable cannot be modified throughout the program or from any part of the program, whereas read-only variable can be modified through the constructor. And once the constant variable has been initialized, it cannot be modified at all. But the read-only variable can be initialized at the time of declaration, and that can be modified through the constructor. That's it for today.